Welcome, dear viewers, to our today's format visit, and many thanks for the numerous entries at Visite at QS24.TV. I have selected an email from Udo. Udo is 58 years old and from Hartberg in Austria. He writes that he would like to ask for advice on an erectile dysfunction that has developed in the last few years. I have looked at the numbers again in my research, and it is true that in Germany there are almost 5 million men who suffer from erectile dysfunction. And today, because of these strong potency problems, whether they are physically or mentally, we find that almost half of all men are over 40. That is not good. That is not good at all. And we know, of course, that this erectile dysfunction has various causes. It is of course closely related to the nerves, but also to the circulatory system, to the blood circulation. It is also related to a hormonal imbalance, and that a lot of things influence this today. One of them is a so-called nitrosative stress. You can measure it with urine and thus also see the methylmalonic acid, whether it was a constant vitamin B12 loss. Now we come to the story of blood circulation, atherosclerosis, which develops due to a high homocysteine value, and especially in a capillary area, where the vessels are of course minimally reduced, the immense becomes the focus. Elsewhere, the body naturally has a much greater tolerance. There are a number of preparations that also follow the same development, namely metformin in diabetes. It is very often in the conversation that vitamin B metabolism is also blocked. This is pre-programmed so that the amino acids homocysteine, which actually become glutathione or cysteine or methionine, both high-quality amino acids, which are also responsible for detoxification, are blocked in such a way by this rapid metabolism. Only B12 is responsible for myelin disc herniation of the nerves and for good stimulation transmission in the context of nerve metabolism. That's not all. There are also a number of so-called beta blockers, especially in the treatment of increased blood pressure. These are things that are also responsible for an irreductive dysfunction. Do not underestimate the radioactivity. This destroys the sperm activity. This also affects the neuronal supply, especially in the lower limbs. I find it always shocking, especially young people who have been wearing their smartphones in their pockets for 12 hours or longer. We should not be surprised why we are slowly developing from our infertility. These are not things that have been said lightly. These are scientific studies. Those who do not want to read them or wake up tomorrow will have huge problems. As part of our collective consciousness, we should all really take measures and minimize the use of these things. This is the big question of nutrition. Nutrition plays an incredibly important role in the metabolism of mitochondrial energy. Mitochondria are significantly affected by radiation. Sperm activity is also significantly reduced because mitochondria are destroyed in the tail of the sperm. There are a number of nutritional deficiencies that also lead to an erectile dysfunction. I am only thinking of B vitamins. I am thinking of the not healthy intestine, which is of course also responsible for the supply of B vitamins. There are psychotherapists who also cause erectile dysfunction as a result. Antidepressants. There are also operational interventions. There are also injuries. There are also meridian blockages that are partly responsible, especially for the large conception vessel and the Gouverneur vessel. This is a medial system. This is an energy conduit that can be blocked, and thus the whole system is energetically regulated. Pay attention to disturbances in the dentine area. Especially the front teeth, up here and down here, are coupled to the meridian supply for the bladder, lower lip, and prostate. These are important things. There is finasteride, which is a medium in the prostate for a prostate hypertrophy, but also for hair loss. They also influence the development of an erectile dysfunction. There are many causes. The question is, what do I do? How do I get on? What do I have to do? I have already mentioned homocysteine several times. There is a very interesting study that was done, where you could see, at Professor Sirens at the University Clinic in Schleswig-Holstein, and you found that in men who suffered from erectile dysfunction, 87% of these men had an increased value of homocysteine. Homocysteine is an amino acid that only develops if it cannot be changed into another substance. This is because the body lacks B12, because the body lacks vitamin B9, which is the folic acid, and because there is not enough vitamin B6. It is not a problem at all to balance this within a substitution. If you have the vitamin B12 level measured again, please let it be measured in urine, and measure the methylmalonic acid, because this shows how much B12 the cell has left. The reference range for vitamin B12 in the blood is simply too large and too far, that you think that it is only in the lower third. But it is still in the reference range, and it has to be at the very top of the blood, so that I can assume that the cell has enough vitamin B12. This is incredibly important. If I assume that every second or third person is already diabetic over 60 years of age, and that everyone gets antidiabetics, but the B12 level is not in the picture, then you should really balance this out of your own responsibility. There is the homocyanin from Heidelberger, but there are many other things, too. You have to measure this. The older you get, the more resorption you get. You don't build up the intrinsic factor in the stomach as well, and then the B12 can't be resorbed that well. There is a sublingual application of B12 under the tongue. I always prefer to inject it, or use natural sources of B12. B12 is also produced in our intestines through Escherichia coli, but I just see that this is not enough. That's why it's good to inject subcutaneous. Medivitam is a combination between this folic acid and B12, and then B6 is actively added in oral form. So there are different things. Erectile dysfunction, very important. The hormone synthesis is stimulated by sport. So just sitting at the desk as an IT guy or not moving is not good for the overall situation and is not natural. The system wants to be stimulated by blood circulation. Blood circulation is always better when the body increases the pumping power and thus signals to life, of course, I need this. If you don't move, you will experience a faster degradation than you think and want. That's why I always appeal to finding what you enjoy. I never urge people to do something they don't enjoy. But some people don't even know that and have to try it out, whether they just take a dance course or buy a nice bike. Or whether they just wanted to say chess or volleyball or whatever. Or just run or just go for a walk. It's about movement, not about exhibition to the last. But I think 10,000 steps, at least 10,000. And they don't always have to walk with a clock, maybe with a step counter, but not with a clock that is still connected to the internet. That's just deadly. But just do it because you enjoy doing it. That can be incredibly valuable for the whole process. The other thing is the gut. The gut is also essentially dependent on it. Or the gut is in such good health that it can deal with itself and life. The gut is always the mirror of a healthy and conscious diet. But it also depends on how well my hormone system, how well the neuronal system, how well everything is supplied. That's why I always start to treat an erectile dysfunction there. There are of course also many natural medical applications that can be done. I can highly recommend, for example, the cryotherapy, the -110 degrees Celsius cold chamber, to do that as a series. About 4 minutes, incredibly valuable, how it increases the mitochondrial performance of a person. Of course, this is an incredible stimulus for increased energy performance on the cellular level, just like this interval training. Hyper and hypoxic, the IHHT. But there are also other things that improve blood circulation. There are natural blood circulation agents like the thromboflow, like the nattokinase or simply like the padmasarcosine, a Tibetan natural healing remedy, which improves microcirculation. For us, it is natural to take a picture of the microcirculation through the dark field microscopy. If you have someone close to you who does dark field microscopy, then that should also be an important way to take a picture of the inner melia of the human being and, of course, this also has a significant impact on blood circulation and thus improves microcirculation. Microcirculation is something different than, I determine whether they have good blood circulation and do an ultrasound, a Doppler ultrasound, maybe from the carotid vessels. The carotid vessels are like an 8-lane highway. Whether a prostate or a testicle gets enough blood in terms of its performance or a penis, that has something to do with how far the small red blood cells are able to reach the capillaries individually. And you can do this very well here, if you take a picture from a dark field. You can have important statements here in order to intervene microcirculatory. There is a lot of plastic today. There is an incredible amount of plastic load in the framework of nanoparticles. There is an incredible amount of phthalates, which are softening agents. And bisphenol A can really be measured, because it acts as a xenohormone. And thus also really within the framework of this problem, to see what my hormonal balance is like, in order to influence this and not get into an estrogen overload. there are still men who like to drink milk. I don't think that's good at all. The milk, or the milks as you can call it, is a collection of thousands of cattle today, which are of course also treated antibacterially, antihormonally or hormonally, so that they bring a high milk yield. That's not good at all. And you should let that. There is a lot of milk and thus also a lot of soy products to be taken. And what we see again and again, there is not enough omega-3. That means many people have an excess of omega-6, arachidonic acid, a lot of meat, sausage, but not omega-3. And omega-3 has a high anti-inflammatory value. It is also good for all cell membranes and for our brain, nerve cells and building materials. And this omega-3 as fatty acid, please always remember, in the form of an oil, omega-3 oil. But also high sea fish, salmon, mackerel, herring, get a lot of omega-3. I come back to homocysteine again. Homocysteine is also very important in macular degeneration or a defect that often occurs when you are 20. Not often, often is not the right expression, but occurs in the 20th year of life. The CBI is a disorder in the form of cystatin B, a synthetic metabolism for the eye. And then the homocysteine rises so high that you can even measure it in urine. But that's all important. So if you say in your life, private services, the normal check at the doctor's office includes blood type, includes sugar, includes cholesterol, includes maybe a normal urine, pH value, white blood cells, but then it's over. And that can't be a statement. You can't tell me if I'm healthy, doctor. Now I have to look at my vitamin D and, above all, what is my homocysteine? These are key values. And if you have a key value and it's high, then I know something is wrong with B12, something is wrong with B6, something is wrong with folic acid. And that is very, very important in the case of irrelative dysfunction. And in many other things too, because that's an atherosclerosis factor, not cholesterol. We've known that for 20 years. And that's important because macular degeneration, short-sightedness, cataract, these are all eye diseases. And they suddenly appear. And then it's actually always good advice, expensive. And the whole thing always limits itself to the eyes. But the eyes are just the victim. I don't really want to say victim, but you have to recognize that beforehand. And that's why it's very important that you check your homocysteine value twice a year. That's not a big financial commitment at all. But it's crucial not to get a blood clot later and not to get an erectile dysfunction later. And above all, start earlier, now also therapeutically. And starting therapeutically means, of course, improving the homocysteine value. I told you that through B6, B12 and folic acid. But at the beginning I also spoke of the so-called nitrosative stress. And that's about the monoxide. In 1998, 3 scientists, including Furchtgott, won the Nobel Prize for this. The effect of nitro, i.e. the monoxide on the human organism. And you know that this monoxide in the cell is essentially responsible for the antibacterial, antiviral effect in the cell. But this monoxide also influences the resistance of the vessel. And we have a lot of experience with L-arginine. This is the amino acid that is now important in monoxide production. And we treated people with very high doses of this amino acid at high blood pressure. This of course makes the vessel relaxed. But on the other hand, today this L-arginine is given in combination with a pine extract. This is an extract from the beech pine, a beef extract from the beech pine. And I noticed that with L-arginine you no longer have to take such high dosages. That means you take 1.7 grams in the first month. And these 1.7 grams remain. But in the second month you add this pine extract twice. That's about 40 milligrams. Or a total of 80. And in the third month then 3 times 40, i.e. 120 milligrams of this pycnoniol or another pine extract. There are different manufacturers now. That would be my thought on this. I'm not someone who's treating an erectile dysfunction. My diagnosis is the patient name. But I still want to limit it to that. And I really hope to make it clear to you that things are happening in you, and only in you. Whether consciously or unconsciously. We live in a time when things are getting out of hand. I didn't include the big topic of stress. I didn't include the big topic of micronutrients. But I think those were some things that just make it clear. And it's a lot more than that. And maybe some of you are grateful that we were able to discuss this today. My love is for Hans Kruppe. And I've allowed myself to pick another text for you. And it's called Not Enough. Intelligence is not enough if wisdom is lacking. Optimism is not enough if strength is lacking. Life is not enough if magic is lacking. Friendship is not enough if trust is lacking. Love is not enough if courage is lacking. I am not enough if you are lacking. And Visite is not enough if you are lacking. In this sense, have a very, very nice week. And I'm looking forward to the next Visite show. And if you like, write to me at Visite at QS24.TV. I'm looking forward to it. Goodbye.